Monolophosaurus. Monolophosaurus /MON-o-LOF-ə-SAWR-əs /Monolophosaurus, meaning single-crested lizard, is a genus of tetanuran theropod dinosaur from the Middle Jurassic Shishugou Formation in what is now Xinjiang, China. It was named for the single crest on top of its skull. Monolophosaurus was a mid-sized theropod at about 5 meters long. Discovery and naming. A nearly complete skeleton of a theropod new to science was discovered by Dong Zhiming in 1981, during stratigraphic exploration for the benefit of the oil industry. The fossil was not unearthed until 1984. In 1987, before description in the scientific literature, it was referred to in the press as Jiangjinmiasaurus, an invalid nomen nudum. In 1992 it was mentioned by Dong Zhiming as Monolophosaurus jiangjinmaui, and in 1993 by Wayne Grady as Monolophosaurus dongi. These latter names also lacked a description and therefore were nomina nuda as well. In 1993-1994, Zhao Zijin and Philip John Curry named and described the type species Monolophosaurus jiangi. The generic name is derived from Greek mu omicron sigma, monos, single, and lambda phi omicron sigma or lambda phi eta, lophos/lophi, crest, in reference to the single crest on the snout. The specific name refers to Jiangjinmao, an abandoned desert in near which the fossil was found. Jiangjinmao means the temple, miao, of the general, Jiangjin. Local legend has it that a general was buried here. The Holotype Iv pp 84019 was discovered in the Yungar Basin, in layers of the Wukaiwan Formation dating from the Bathonian Calovian. It consists of a rather complete skeleton including the skull, lower jaws, vertebral column and pelvis. The rear of the tail, the shoulder girdle and the limbs are lacking. It represents an adult or subadult individual. The type specimen was restored with plaster to be used in a traveling exhibit. Its left side was encased in foam which has hindered subsequent study. A reconstruction was made of the missing elements to create casts of complete skeletal mounts. In 2010, 2 studies by Stephen Brusate, et al. Redescribed the holotype, at the time still the only specimen known, in detail. In 2006, Thomas Carr suggested that Guanlong, another theropod with a large, thin, and fenestrated midline crest and from the same formation, was in fact a subadult individual of Monolophosaurus. Usually Guanlong had been considered a Procertosaurid tyrannosauroid, but Carr had performed an analysis in which both specimens clustered and were allosauroids. More conservatively, in 2010 Gregory S. Paul renamed Guanlong into a Monolophosaurus species, Monolophosaurus wukai, presuming the taxa might be sister species. In 2010, Brusate rejected the identity, pointing out that the Guanlong holotype was actually a fully adult individual. Description. The type and only known individual has been estimated at 5 meters, 16.4 feet. In 2010, Paul estimated the length at 5.5 meters, 18 feet, and the weight at 475 kilograms, 1,047 pounds. In 2016 Molina Perez and Larramendi gave a higher estimation of 7.5 meters, 24.6 feet, and 710 kilograms, 1,565 pounds. Several distinguishing traits have been established. The snout on its midline bears a large crest, the front of which is formed by the Pre-Maxilla. It continues to behind over the nasals and lacrimals, its rear touches the frontals. The top of the crest runs parallel to the upper jaw edge. The ascending branches of the Pre-Maxilla each have a forked rear. The side of the Pre-Maxilla features a deep groove running from an opening in the ascending branch towards an opening below the nostril. Within the depression around the upper rear side of the nostril 2 pneumatic openings are present, of unequal size. The rear branch of the lacrimal, above the eye socket, has a distinctive hatchet-shaped process pointing upwards. The combined frontals are rectangular and elongated with a length-width ratio of 1.67. The holotype skull has a length of 80 centimeters. It is as such rather flat, but this is obscured by the presence of a large snout crest occupying about 3/4 of the skull length, reaching the level of the eye sockets. Sprouting from the Pre-Maxilla at the snout tip, the crest is largely formed by the nasal bones. Transversely it has a triangular cross-section with a broad base and a more narrow top. This does not form a ridge, however, but has a flat upper surface. The nasal crest side is very rugous with a series of bosses and swellings. The nasal bone contributes to the upper rear part of the depression around the anteorbital fenestra. This area shows a number of pneumatic openings or pneumatophores, where diverticula of the air sacs entered the bone. In the front 2 small foramina are present, more to the rear 2 large horizontal oval openings. CAT scans show that internally the nasal bone is heavily pneumatized, with large air chambers. Also the jugal bone is pneumatized. The lacrimal is eye-shaped. It has an ascending branch forming the vertical rear edge of the crest. Due to the triangular cross-section, this branch is inclined towards the midline of the skull. The upper outer side of this branch forms a rectangular boss. Behind the eye socket, on the postorbital, another, smaller, horn is present. The frontal bones do not contribute to the crest. They are unique among theropoda in having a combined rectangular instead of triangular shape, due to the posterior position of the crest rear. The Pre-Maxilla has a narrow ascending branch, forming the front of the crest. The rear of this branch is forked and embraces a lateral point of the nasal, a feature not recognized in the original description of 1994. At the base of the branch a small opening is present. A larger opening is located below the nostril. Both openings are connected by a distinct groove, curving around the underside of the nostril. The function of this unique trait is unknown. The Pre-Maxilla bears 4 teeth. The maxilla bears 13 teeth. The maxilla has a short depression around the lower front of the anteorbital fenestra. Within this area a smaller hollowing is located, closed at the inside, perhaps representing the fenestra premaxillaris, of which it has the usual position, or the fenestra maxillaris, the normal identity of a single opening. In the brain case, the channel of the nervus trigeminus, the fifth brain nerve, is not bifurcated. The palatine bone is pneumatized, as shown by the presence of a pneumatophore. In the lower jaw, the external mandibular fenestra is rather small for a basal tetanuran. The holotype shows 18 teeth in the right dentary, 17 in the left dentary. Such an asymmetry is not rare among large theropods. A row of foramina is present below and on the outer side of the tooth row. These openings are relatively large below the first 4 teeth, more to behind, they become smaller and their row curves downwards. From the 9th tooth onwards, the foramina merge into a groove. A second row of openings runs parallel to the lower jaw edge and ends at the 13th tooth position, which is exceptionally far. At the inside of the dentary, the Machilean groove at the level of the 3rd tooth extends to the front into 2 superimposed narrow slits. The rear of the lower jaw shows a unique combination of a kinked suture between the angular and the surangular, and the basal trait of the surangular reaching the rear jaw edge. The rather small foramen surangulaire posterior is not overhung by a thick bone shelf, which is rare among large theropods. The vertebral column consists of 9 cervical vertebrae, 14 dorsals and 5 sacrals. The number of tail vertebrae is unknown. The cervical vertebrae of the neck are strongly pneumatized. They possess pleurocoels at their sides and their insides are hollowed out by large air chambers. The neural spines of the cervical vertebrae are narrow in side view and decreased in width towards the rear. Those of the 8th and 9th vertebrae were rod-like. At least the first 3 dorsal vertebrae of the back have pleurocoels as well. The dorsals are connected by robust hyposphin-hypantrum complexes. From the 6th vertebra onwards the neural spines abruptly become wider. The neural spines of the sacral vertebrae are not fused into a superneural plate. The tail base is slightly oriented downwards. The caudal vertebrae of the tail base also show hyposphin-hypantrum complexes. In the pelvis, the ilium has a slightly convex upper profile. Its front blade has a pending, hook-shaped point. The edge of the base of the front blade is incised by a groove. The ilium has some basal traits. The process to which the pubic bone is attached has 2 facets, one directed to below, the other obliquely pointing to the front, instead of a single facet. Also basal is the fact that the hip joint is overhung by a hood-shaped extension of the antetrochanter. The front of this hood reaches further to below and to the outer side. There is no clear brevis shelf. The pubic bones and the ischia resemble each other in having a foot and being prepare connected via bony skirts, pierced by a foramen. Classification. MON-o-LOF-ə-SAWR-ɛs was originally termed a megalosaur and has often since been suggested to be an allosauroid. Smith et al. 2007, was the first publication to find MON-o-LOF-ə-SAWR-ɛs to be a non-neotetanuran tetanuran, by noting many characters previously thought to be exclusive of Allosauroidea to have a more wider distribution. Also, Zhao et al. In 2010 noted various primitive features of the skeleton suggesting that MON-o-LOF-ə-SAWR-ɛs could be one of the most basal tetanuran dinosaurs instead. Benson, 2008, 2010, placed MON-o-LOF-ə-SAWR-ɛs in a clade with Chwandongocoelurus that is more basal than Megalosauridae and Spinosauridae and the Megalosauroidea. Later, Benson et al. 2010, found the Chwandongocoelurus/MON-o-LOF-ə-SAWR-ɛs clade to be outside of Megalosauroidea and Neotetanuri, near the base of Tetanuri. A 2012 phylogeny found MON-o-LOF-ə-SAWR-ɛs and Chwandongocoelurus, while not sister taxa, to form a group outside more derived groups at the base of Tetanuri. The following cladogram is based on the phylogenetic analysis conducted by Carano in 2012, showing the relationships of Monolophosaurus. Paleobiology. The type specimen, IVPP 84019, had its 10th and possibly 11th neural spines fractured. They are fused together. A series of parallel ridges on one of the specimen's dentaries may represent tooth marks.